Today, we're going to be talking about your relationship with family and how that pertains to putting a plan in place to keep your life and keep your loved ones. Did I say that right, Garth?
Plan your end game so loved ones stay loved ones.
There we go. Okay, very good. It's hard to read in the mirror image, but yes. So thanks for joining us, Garth, today, the author of Keep Your Life. And today we are talking about the first part of the book, which is relationships. We've talked a little bit about our own relationship with ourselves and the way we think about family and money and those sorts of things, but we're kind of steering more towards relationship with family and what that looks like and how that plays a role in creating our end plan or our game plan for the end of our life, however you want to say it.
True. So in the chapter 2 story, we continue on with a case where you have 5 siblings. And we talked about a little bit of the boys versus the girls when they were growing up. The boys hung out in their dad's workshop, and they weren't very nice to their younger sisters. But then, jump ahead 40 years or so, and now the parents are alone in a Western state. The kids are all across the country. And now, the phone calls seem like, what's happening? Oh, mom's in the hospital again. Oh, she broke her hip. Wait a minute, wasn't she in the hospital like 3 months ago because she fell? What's going on? And the one sibling who's single, and because of her military career, she's semi-retired. She's the one who's available to go up and see what's going on and kind of reconnect with her parents, besides the annual Thanksgiving visit. But what happens is, in doing the right things, taking care of business and getting their house in order, trying to find out if they have a will, all these sorts of things, her brothers get really suspicious. They think maybe she's ferreting away the prized items of the home, spending their parents' money, all these sorts of nefarious type assumptions transpire, and it just gets kind of ugly. Yeah,
and that's why you talk about keeping your loved ones right, because yes, there's always that conflict. It's really a communication issue. When people are distant, they don't know what's happening. It does create a lot of angst and anxiety for those who are involved. And so do you get into suggestions at all about how to be preemptive and putting a plan in place to prevent that from happening?
Well, sure. And that's the third part of the book is actually step by step what you do. In this particular story, Susan and Walt, the parents, they didn't feel like they had that much money that they needed a will. They figured everything, people would just be adults. They would be civil. They would all do the right thing. I mean, older generation just kind of expects that from people. But the problem is the default laws probably aren't going to be a good fit for everybody. There's too many complications and complexities in our lives to expect default law to cover things the right way, especially when some people are being helpful and sacrificing to care give, and others are the other end of that spectrum. So what Susan and Walt could have done is work with an attorney and plan these things out so that the kids would just then be implementing what they pre-specified in their estate planning documents, which includes powers of attorney, which are super important while you're still alive. The will comes into play after you're gone. So what Marcy had to do, the daughter who was available, she flew up there. She had to meet with an attorney. It had to be an elder law attorney because there were some questions with regard to cognitive ability, meaning, are their signatures valid? That's a big deal, because if a signature is not valid, now you're looking at some kind of a guardianship or conservatorship, as they call it in California, and which is a huge, expensive process. But she did engage an attorney, and that put in place a professional third party, kind of a firewall, Ooh. And they established a trust, and the trust set the boundaries, and the trust was able to sprinkle assets as opposed to just the dump that happens with a will when it's probated. Anyway, the point is there were things she could do, but it was just in the nick of time. It could have been horrendously different if she hadn't gone up there sooner and hadn't met with an attorney. And in fact, she talked with the manager of a home care company who referred her to an attorney. So a lot of times, people aren't calling attorneys right away. Most people don't want to talk to an attorney right away. Right. They usually wait till things are really bad, which is a bad idea. But they talk to someone who provides professional help, whether it's non-medical or medical, and those people know the lay of the land. And those kinds of companies can be good resources for getting the help you need in a particular area that you're not familiar with.
And we know that this is so much more common than we all recognize or that we focus on it. And you don't realize it till it happens to your family. And I think that's the takeaway. Being in this industry, I witnessed it, and more times than not, it destroys families. And they always say that saying, money corrupts, power corrupts, and it is unfortunately true. One of the circumstances I've seen happen over and over again, as well as the primary caretaker is also handling finances and paying for caring for that loved one, and that's not being disclosed to everybody else. And so it's like, where did all the money go? In reality, much of that money went to caregiving for that loved one.
And that happened in this story. She was accused of mismanaging funds, and she went to the bank and brought in their trust department, and they audited the books and vindicated her, at least on paper. That sort of thing can happen, but it costs money. But you need those professionals sometimes. But professionals can always do a better job on the proactive side than the reactive side. That's one of the takeaways. And like you're mentioning, you're familiar with all these sorts of things. One thing I don't get into in the book is statistics, because statistics are always these numbers out there. So I'll ask, well, do you know somebody? Does this sound familiar? Mm-hmm. Because when that brings it home, when we know people who are going through something similar, that means, yeah, it could happen to you.
Right. And I appreciate too, when we get into the third part of your book, how you get into all the details, things that we don't think of, healthcare directives, and like you said, power of attorney and conservatorship. All of those things aren't things that we sit down and think about ahead of time. And that's why it's important to consult with a professional, if not a team of professionals that are in place in advance. I encourage anybody who wants to learn more about this, if you have any suspicion that you may care for someone in your family, which I presume it's potentially everyone, then I would encourage you to get a copy of Garth's book. In this particular case, read through chapters 1 and 2 and really ask yourself, is this something that possibly could happen to me, and how can I prevent it? Then this is going to be the right book for you. If they'd like to download a chapter, I believe you've made that available here below on a link that they can use. Or if they want to get the book, where should they go, Garth?
Amazon.
Okay.
I'm Garth Hassel on Amazon, I promise.
Just search Garth Hassel on Amazon. You can get your copy there. But most importantly, I'd encourage you to schedule a short phone call with Garth, just so you can kind of share your story, what your thoughts, your concerns, your fears are, and he can give you some great free advice on which direction to head to make sure this doesn't happen to you and you keep your loved ones, right?
Yes. You can find me at meetgarth.com.
Perfect. I appreciate it, Garth. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rob.